Welcome to RFI's Banking Uncovered, the podcast going behind the industry PR, the media spin, the product awards, and the investor reports to look at what's really going on in the customer data, and to ask global thought leaders about their thoughts and views on the future of banking and payments.
Hi, Chloe James here for RFI Global's Banking Uncovered. We are really excited to have Jason Yetton, who is the Chief Executive of Consumer at Westpac Bank in Australia, on the episode today. He's held that role since August 2023, and within it, his remit covers consumer banking products, as you would imagine, and services to customers right across Australia. They got a ton of customers, one of Australia's biggest banks. Previously, he's led the group's specialist business division, plus a number of group executive roles within the business, group strategy, retail, and business banking. So very across every single product of that organisation. Outside of Westpac, he's been the CEO of Newco at CBA and also CEO and MD of Society One, which was an early financial services disruptor, and actually when Jason and I first met. He's spent a very long time leading, not to age him, but I'm excited to welcome him to Banking Uncovered. Jason, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you very much for having me, Chloe.
Well, great. So we obviously in Banking Uncovered, we really dive into that data, but given the above and all of the leadership roles that you've had, I thought we would start a little bit with this podcast on leadership. I really want to pick your brains on what makes you who you are and leading one of the biggest banks in the country. So given that and thinking about leadership, what do you think has been sort of your motivation in your day-to-day leading the Westpac organisation, but also how that's evolved over time as times have changed and organisations have changed?
Well, I guess if I think back to when I first got into financial services, Chloe, probably two things stood out for me. One, just the important role that banks and financial services play in the overall economy and the development of a country. I don't want to overstate the importance of financial services, but it's often described as the oil in the engine that can make the engine go faster, the economy expand, whether that's for businesses, for consumers, for governments that we provide services to. So it's a very important macro role. I guess the second element, though, is a bit more personal and just the economic empowerment that it can provide to individuals and businesses to succeed, to start up enterprise, to grow new businesses, employ people, buy cars, buy homes, travel, basic things that people rely on in Australia, but also things that enable them to do what they want to do in living their life. And I've always found that's a really important opportunity, but also comes with a really important responsibility to do that in a way that is safe and sound and kind of protects the interests of people, given that if things go wrong, it can often have very serious consequences for people.
And you've led sort of obviously huge organisations and then on the smaller scale, and you sort of went from huge to perhaps a little smaller with Society One, for example, and then back to the big Goliath, if you like. What have been the differences in your leadership style of those kinds of organisations, or is it very similar?
I think the similarity is I've always looked for an organisation that's ambitious in its purpose, as one objective. The second is I've looked for organisations that have always been transforming or innovating to do it differently, to do it better, to do it faster, to do it cheaper. And ultimately, I've looked for businesses that are kind of team sports that typically involve different groups of people coming together to make that experience the right one for customers. So you're right, some of them have been smaller in terms of numbers. Westpac, obviously very large. When I started out, it was certainly getting used to leading smaller teams. But all of them, whether it's Bankers Trust, whether it's Westpac, CBA or Society One, I think it's been that ambition of the organisation, the team sport that is required to do it really, really well, and ultimately kind of an innovative or entrepreneurial attitude that if better can be achieved, then we should strive for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's really inspiring. When you think about culture and the culture within an organization. I talk to a lot of my guests about culture and the importance of it in a business. What do you do at Westpac to help foster, a fantastic environment, as you say, almost like a team sport environment within the business so that people, happy to come in, they're wanting to, contribute in the ways that you would like them to?
Yeah, for me, that's probably the ultimate leadership test. One of my favorite kind of management gurus is Peter Drucker, Chloe, and he is often quoted as saying, "Culture eats strategy for lunch."
Yeah,
Um,
that one. Yeah.
I really like that kind of way of thinking because when companies are often really successful, or if you think of other endeavors in sport or in the arts, often people say, "Wow, that's an amazing culture."
Mhm.
and and so you kind of know it when it's not there. It's kind of really clear. It's often harder to describe that magic when you've got it. But for me, it comes down to five key things that I talk to people about. The first is that I want a culture that's purpose driven and values led. From top to bottom, you want people that understand and kind of embrace both the purpose and the values, or the behaviors and the way that that purpose will be delivered. The second element I speak about is to have a high performance mindset,
Mhm.
to, in a sense, open yourself up to be judged by others, typically external benchmarks, whether that's from customers or your people, the community, or shareholders.
Mhm.
And always strive to be leading those kind of indicators in a best practice sense, not just in Australia, but looking at global best practice in many cases. The third thing is really important in financial services, particularly in banking. It needs to be safe and sound. Safe physically, because there are risks involved in banking when you think of cash handling and branches and security, but also safe in a psychological sense. There's lots of different people and lots of different roles, lots of different backgrounds. You want them to feel safe to speak up, to contribute, to test
Yeah.
and challenge. And if they see something wrong, to raise their hand and say, "Hey, this isn't the right way. We've got something to improve here." Certainly think diversity and inclusion is a really important facet. And I speak a lot about that because our country is a very diverse country in terms of multicultural backgrounds. So are our people. Um, Over half of them kind of identify as having more than one cultural background, which is really interesting. And I think that diversity of thought, the diversity of experience, the diversity of age, the diversity of gender, just the diversity of perspective, if included well, allows for much better decision making, much better business performance. So for me, that's a key element. And probably the last bit is about having a strong risk culture. When you're in financial services, you're in the business of taking risk, both for your clients and also for your company. So risk management, whether it's financial risk or operational risk, is just part of the decision making activity that must come with looking at new opportunities to grow and help customers. And so I don't talk about cultures being any one thing, but just the amalgamation of those five elements.
Mm.
And if I break it down to something simple, I just often say, look, if you were the CEO of Westpac, what would you want to do in that circumstance? Is one test. And I hope that if I give them the right frameworks, they can make that right call. And the other one I think is a newspaper test. Would you be happy with whatever activity, decision, or behavior you're doing ending up on the front page of the newspaper?
Yeah.
If you are, it's probably okay. And if you're not, well, it's probably time to rethink and say, is there a better way?
Oh, I love that. That really resonates with me. My father has always taught me, which something that's kind of aligns with that, which is, if you wouldn't be willing to stand up in front of a group of people and publicly say whatever it is, then you shouldn't be saying it. It's kind of along that kind of line. I also love your point there on diversity within the business, and there is such a huge diversity within Westpac. How many staff do you have? About 40,000, is it? Or?
The group has about 40,000
Yeah.
staff, and in
Yeah.
consumer banking, we're close to 14,000
Yeah.
people right across the country in all parts.
Yeah. Well, that's fabulous. I mean, and I think the diversity within your people is wonderful because there's a diversity within their customers and the customer base. So if you have everyone represented as far as being a part of the organization, then you're also equally representing, the nation and the nation's customers. So I think that's really fabulous stuff. We're going to jump into some data because we are on Banking Uncovered, and that's what we talk about, RFI Global's data. So a couple of stats I'm going to just run by you, and then really just asking for your perspective, Jason, on some of these stats and why you think they've landed where they've landed. So this is from just last December. So we're recording this in February. So just a couple of months ago, Westpac's consumer MFI, which is obviously main financial institution NPS, was in the positive of 2.7, and that put it in the second place, pardon me, just after CBA. This has been a really continued improvement from Westpac, and I'm just wondering if you could shed a little light on what you think the factors are for that improvement that you've been seeing when it comes to consumer NPS in the positive.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe. Well, I mean, that's a nice data point, but when I started, it was less flattering. We were ranked number 4 on that very same measure behind the other 3 banks, and we're in negative territory.
Yeah.
And so when we started, a bit of context, Westpac had been going through a very large simplification program and risk uplift program. And I think through that, we become a bit internally focused, as often is the case, rather than truly customer focused and externally oriented as to what their needs were. So the first thing we spoke about was to put that emphasis back right through the organization. So it's very much cultural led at the time, not focused on our people that deal with customers every day in a branch or a call center or operations, but really all the people behind them that need to support them, whether in product or technology or legal or risk. So we really explain the importance of what we do is, first of all, galvanized by how our customers feel about us. And that saw a change where Net Promoter Score for consumer was put into scorecards for everyone in the company that touches consumer banking. So that was the first important indicator. We did launch then our service promise to customers. We've always had a service culture, but we had many frameworks, and we simplified that to one service promise, and that is to listen, to care, and then importantly to act on the customer's feedback to resolve the issue at hand. And that service promise was equally rolled out to everyone in the company. But once you've got that cultural bit, you do have to just stare at the data. And the Net Promoter question is really interesting to me, Chloe, because at its core, it says, would you recommend Westpac Consumer Bank to your family and friends? And it gives you a score. And like all bankers, we love data, but the real value often comes from the next part of the survey, which is the question, why? And that why element is very rich in giving us feedback. It's not the only source of customer data. We get many sources of customer data and verbatims. Complaints is one example. And so we brought all that together and said, look, where are we doing well and where aren't we doing well? And that enabled us to design a program across our channels, the branches, the call centers, mobile, online, as well as all the product lines of business, home lending, credit cards, personal loans, cash and transactional banking lines, to say, hey, where aren't we getting the end-to-end consistently right from the customer experience perspective? And fair to say that no one silver bullet in that journey. We just found lots of areas where we felt we could improve the experience, and we've been knocking them off. We've done that in kind of 4 key areas. One, our customers said it's really important to make the everyday consistently, and this word is important, consistency, easy. And what customers are saying, look, all the stuff I do day to day has to work. I need to know the service levels. I need it to be delivered for me. So that was the first group of insights that we got. The second insight was to really delight customers in key moments that matter. So there are lots of things that people do every day in banking, but sometimes key moments really matter. What would be an example of that? Scams and fraud, really emotionally involved. The death of a family member, really emotionally involved. Lots of ones where they might be smaller volumes than what we deal to day,
Yeah.
but are just so emotionally important, sometimes emotionally very stressful. Settling on your home loan, really important day on both parties' sides. So really looking at some of those that you just must get right, both in a legal sense, but also must get right in an experience sense. Then there were two other areas. One that our customers have been with us for a long time, our loyals, as we call them. They said, hang on, we think you've got to love the loyals a lot more. So much better when you're starting an account than maybe 10, 20 or 30 years. We kind of lost contact in a proactive sense with some of our relationships, and a reconnection back to that. And the last area was to create value beyond price. So everyone knows in banking, yes, everyone really cares about the home loan rate, the term deposit rate, etc. But actually, there's a lot of value that comes beyond just the price, and whether that's how you reward your customers with loyalty, how you recognize them. They said actually we can improve in that area as well. And so we've designed a program where we get your feedback from RFI, our own inside information from our own channels, ideas from our people, which get logged via Ignite on these dimensions. And just systematically every month we address some of those pain points or those opportunities. So there's no flicker switch.
Yeah.
We've generally got better. It's nice to see the relative improvement. But on the other hand, at plus 2.7, the job from my perspective isn't done, because we want to be the most advocated bank in Australia, and we're not there yet. And I would like us to be advocated in a way that's similar to other companies that our customers love in their day-to-day lives, not just being the best of a bank, but being an integral part of their life that they really value and can count on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a different perspective, isn't there, on a bank? It's sort of like a need to have. I like that reference there of, needing to have a bank and then satisfaction kind of coming at a certain point. But there are other companies that, consumers just love and wanting to sort of enter into that bracket. Some great points there on moments that matter, and you mentioned the really emotional moments. Obviously, the home loan one that resonated with me. I mentioned to you my experience there. But actually, more importantly, to the other points you made about perhaps, the death of a family member or a scam or a fraud, a terribly emotional thing to happen to you. That's the time when you really need, things like the financial aspects of things just to happen and just to work, because you're so busy dealing with the emotional heart stuff that, you need that the functionality of the banking to work. So it's interesting looking at all the little different points that Westpac's looking at to make those incremental changes. And it sounds like going through with a fine-tooth comb, but just keep, like you said, knocking them on the head, just, knocking them on the head, making all those changes, and then that's gradually moving that score up. You mentioned a little bit about relationship managers, and I wanted to talk about RMs next a little bit. And this is actually when we look at regional areas. So Westpac has seen quite a big swing actually, an improvement in regional areas when consumer MFI NPS has improved, and this is from back in October 2023, but it was a negative 5.0, and then in December last year, December just gone, 2024, it's a positive 6.9. That's a huge swing, which is amazing, really. I just wondered what has happened with Westpac Banking and the commitment to regional Australia and the satisfaction and success that you're seeing from those individuals. And I'll also note we're really sticking on the consumer side in this podcast, but there are great numbers on the business side too, with Westpac leading the majors for business relationship managers in the NPS as well in that regional space. If you could just chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I just zoom out a little bit, regional Australia is really important to the country. It's also really important to Westpac. We have 2.2 million customers in regional Australia. That's as defined by the ABS and the government localities. So it's large. In total, Westpac Group has a bit over 10 million customers. So it's a material group. We have 1,000 people who work and live in regional Australia today. And so if I kind of take a step back on regional Australia, first of all, probably the key issue there is about access to banking services. And in the consumer space last year, we made a commitment not to do any closures of branches in regional areas until 2027. And we recently extended that in line with the Treasurer's announcement for all banks to do so until mid 2027 at the earliest. So that's important. But important in that, it's not just the branch, that's a physical structure. It's the people in the branch who are locals, who know their communities best, who feel really empowered, but also responsible to make sure their communities can thrive and survive or deal with challenges that are very different and nuanced in different parts of the country, some of which are growing very strongly with natural links to agriculture or mining or tourism or other new industries, but some of which are definitely struggling for the opposite reason. And so that commitment was both important for being there to deliver banking services, but also to give confidence to our own people that they've got continued employment and opportunities with the Westpac Group. Relationship management is kind of the natural extension of that, I think, Chloe. When I talk to any customer, but particularly in regional, I mean, for them, the face of the bank is the banker they know. And that might be the bank manager. That might be the teller. That might be my relationship manager in agri or small business or commercial banking. But for them, they want someone that knows them, that knows their business and can help them make decisions, almost navigate the company. Because Westpac, as a big company, can be hard to navigate. And that's your key point, people. And they're locals. They're people just like, you and me. They know that they're locals. They know that those people will have their backs and fight the fight that needs to be fought, if it is, for customers. So when it comes to relationship management, I'd say it's kind of mostly that this is the face of Westpac. That is Westpac to most of our customers. When you've got a great relationship, you tend to love the banker and love the bank. When you don't have a relationship or someone you can go to, you tend to find that you're getting the worst of our processes and frustration. You can feel a bit like a number, and therefore you often are more a detractor of the bank. So I think having local staff, but also the right calibre of staff is important. We have learnt, though, that it is really difficult to ensure in every region you've got access to the right expertise of the Westpac Group. It just doesn't exist in some areas. And so in the last 5-10 years, I think one of the important changes has been our virtual banking teams, which is a video-based interaction face-to-face, can be at work, can be at home, can be on a mobile device, which is safe and secure, but with a banker often located in one of the 5 capital cities, but can do exactly what you do face-to-face over video. And that works in metro areas as well. But I think a big issue in regional areas is what I'd call digital inclusion and being able to access the best of Westpac if it's not in your local area or don't have a banker. And that's one of the changes that I think has really been embraced by regional customers.
Yeah, that's great. It's like, as you say, connecting everyone and just bringing people into sort of the digital connection. Chatting a little bit about branch, I'd just love a little bit of your perspective on just branch in general, not necessarily regional Australia, across Australia, and also globally. It's a big topic of conversation when it comes to banking. We've been talking about it for years, actually, the branch. Now, branches have changed a lot. Now there's, a concierge that greets you. There are different pop-up branches that they have in shopping centres and different things like that. What's your perspective on the branch overall and the future of the branch in, I guess, more traditional banking methods and countries?
Yeah, well, I've been in banking since 2008, Chloe, and every year I think since then I've heard that the branch is dead.
Yeah, I
On
know,
one
right?
headline, on another headline, I've seen "Long live the branch."
Yeah.
To put in perspective, we've got over 500 branches across the country today. Um, uh, about 1 million customers a month will use the branch.
Mhm.
Now, 97% of our transaction volume is done digitally. So, kind of that role of cash in
Wow, is that the
branch,
number? Gosh,
that's the
that's
number.
huge.
So, the role of cash in branch, or the traditional thought of what I do in a branch, that's definitely declining, but has not disappeared
Yeah.
yet. The RBA would say, a bit under 10% of transactions are done in cash now, and it is continuing to fall. But about 1 million people visit the branch, not just for a cash transaction, but to visit a banker to help them with their financial requirements.
Hmm.
So I still see it as an important channel. Um, it's a place where our bankers are housed, outside of head offices where I'm sitting today. Local bankers, that is their head office, is the branch, is the business
Yeah.
banking centre. So that's important for local communities. But we're doing something quite different in branches. We are doing a co-location strategy, which is relevant to the Westpac group because we've got Westpac branches, St George, Bank SA, and Bank of Melbourne. And
Hmm.
increasingly, what we've been doing is just co-locating them together. That saves on the property costs because they are
Okay.
expensive branches,
Yep.
but it keeps the local teams in town for their branded customers. And although branches have been declining for the last 10 years, as have ATMs, reflecting customers' moves to digital, we still see an important role for the branch, particularly in servicing small business customers, housing bankers that might see you in branch or might come to your work or home. That
Hmm.
would probably be their home base. And of course, we are one of the banks that have committed to making sure cash services are available for everyone that needs to use them.
Hmm.
Um, will that be forever? No, I think the role of branch will always continue to change depending on what customers
Hmm.
prefer. But as we stand today, it's a really, really important channel. And it's also an important channel if you've got a problem with the bank because it's almost service recovery. If something happens to you, that's probably your first port of call is to
Yeah.
go in and see a local bank manager and see if they can help.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe you don't want to wait on the phone and maybe you want to actually go in and face to face see someone. I still think it obviously has a huge importance when it comes to sort of brand and just see physically being able to see your bank, which is, the holder of all of your worldly income, just being able to see that that's got that physical structure, I think is still important. And I mentioned to you, we bought a house last year and believe me, we sat across from our relationship manager within branch and had that conversation because that was huge for us. And I'll definitely, personally, for me, I wanted to sit with someone who was going to tell me it was all going to be okay, and it was. So I agree with you. I still think there's absolutely a place for it. You spoke a little bit there on digital. We're going to wrap things up soon, Jason. I could talk to you for ages about all of these topics. I think it's so interesting. But a little bit about MPS on mobile and digital. In December last year, December 2024, Westpac saw the mobile app MPS of positive 21.7, which is close to its best ever result. Absolutely huge. How much focus have you put into your mobile app improvements? And I just want to preface here that you and I have had a conversation about making sure that all of the functionality across the app is available to all Westpac customers and the importance of that to you.
Yeah, look, it's really fundamental. I think, if I just put it from a customer perspective, customers are logging into their mobile phone every day across the country, check their balances, make payments online. So I think fundamentally that's got to be a kind of easy, personalized, really rich bank in your pocket. You shouldn't have to go to a banker. You should be able to do it yourself if that's your choice. And a lot of basic banking day to day is absolutely the bank in your pocket is the way that most Australians do it. We put a lot of focus on that over the past 2 years, to be fair, in our digital and technology teams. And I've been really pleased on the way that they've both upgraded functionality as well as the user experience, which is just as important. And for the last couple of years, actually, Forrester rated us as the best mobile banking app in the country for Westpac, which is very pleasing for the efforts of the team that have worked hard there. That will just continue. We want it to be a full bank in your pocket. Anything that you can do in Westpac, you should be able to do digitally. But one of the areas we've really had to uplift, as have all banks, is what comes with a digital opportunity are the digital risks. And that includes things like scams and frauds. So as everything moves digital, so do criminals, so do people who looking to take your identity and ultimately take your savings. And in the last kind of 12 to 18 months, done a lot of initiatives on scams and fraud. Safer Pay is one of those in the app, which checks if you're doing new payees, whether the BSBs, the account numbers, look in a sense, whether it looks like it's going to be a fraudulent transaction. We give people traffic lights as to whether we think it's a safe or unsafe transaction to pursue. We have launched Westpac Verify, which verifies all those BSBs and account numbers. You might know as in small business, a lot of the scams are related to payments and intercepting kind of invoices and changing them, and it can be really hard to pick up. So we verify that against the whole history of our databases of payments made to valid companies. And recently we've launched Safe Call to customers, which is a way in which with Optus, if we call you, it verifies that it's from Westpac. We tell them what it's about, and it's 100% verified by Optus as being from Westpac. And that's because there are lots of bank impersonation scams. So I think this is the new age of keeping your money safe. It used to be with big safes in branches, but now in digital age, it's about keeping you safe from cyber criminals. We spend a lot of money on cyber, but it's also keeping you safe from people who are trying to trick you and fraud you and scam you. And I think we do a really, we've kind of invested over $100 million in that area in the last 2 years. It's a place we've seen fraud come down, and scams come down, which is pleasing, but it's still far too pervasive in the Australian economy, Chloe. And when it happens to an individual, it's devastating. So, this will be both the functionality and the usability will enhance, but it has to be really safe, has to be secure, and ultimately want to bring the best of our protection to all our customers to help them know that their money's safe and protect them from scam artists out there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important point, and I'm sure bankers around the world, it's something people firmly have their eye on. And, to your point of putting significant investment into that area is absolutely necessary, and great to hear that you're doing that. We've got to close up, but I do want to just finish just a little bit on sort of future view and future perspective. There's obviously been so much volatility in the industry globally, really. Lots of, unstable rates, cost of living, pressures on individuals and customers out there. What do you see, and just looking forward and looking ahead to 2025 and beyond, Jason, but as the biggest challenges and opportunities for customers, for your customers in Australia and also abroad into the future?
Yeah, I mean, Australia is such a diverse economy and a diverse society, both geographically and in terms of our business focus. Sometimes, kind of talking about things in generalities misses some of the point. But I think quite clearly, high inflation for a long period of time has definitely caused issues around cost of living. As inflation starts to come down, we're probably more likely to see an easing of interest rates than not. So it's probably a question of when, but that will be really important to people who have mortgages with banks. And I think cost of living more generally is a big issue, including for renters, because of issues around the supply and availability of new housing. So I think that's broadly a really key one. I think the second one, though, is Australian businesses are in pretty good shape, Chloe. And I think they're looking for a bit more confidence and certainty from government policy. I think there can be more done on regulation to streamline that. But I think businesses have got good balance sheets. They're very competitive globally. And I think they're well primed to invest if the conditions and confidence are right for business. And I think that's really important because that's the driver of economic growth is business, both small, medium and large in this country, but business is in good shape. If I think about opportunities for customers, I think they're doing what they always wanted to do. Can you help me, live the life I want? Can you help me buy a home? Can you help me invest in property? Can you protect me? Can you help me prepare for retirement? Those things are always there. And it's one of the reasons Australia is considered to have a world-class banking and financial services system. Not perfect, but very good. And it's important that we are strong and good because we're the oil that lets that kind of flow for the future. So if I summed it up, I'd say I'm more positive about the next 12 to 18 months than not. Probably the key risks that everyone worry about tend to be more global, both on geopolitical risks, trading risks in a world of tariffs, if they come into play, can be quite impactful for a lot of Australian industries.
Absolutely.
But if I look back, we've been able to adapt and change and grow, and that's part of the Aussie spirit. Whatever the external environment throws out, I think the tenacity and determination of Australians. I'm in the optimistic camp.
Yeah. That's all right. I'm there with you. I'm the eternal optimist as well, Jason. Listen, it was really great chatting with you, and thank you so much for your generosity of thought, being open to the conversation. We really appreciate it. It was great to see you address some of those numbers from Westpac, and looking forward to seeing what's ahead for you all. Thanks again for being on Banking Uncovered.
My pleasure. Thanks, Chloe.